Alright, so right here, let me explain a little bit about what I'm doing. I'm building some raised panel cabinets. Okay, you can kind of see my door right here. It's got the nice raised panel on it. It's got the stiles, the rails that go around it. So for these drawers, especially these up here, I've got them, I believe it's 4 inches. Yeah, 4 inches wide here. They're going to be very difficult to make raised panels. So what I could do is I could make it slabs. I could do a slab front, but I really want to do raised panels for the drawers as well. So let me explain a little bit about what I've done to make that possible. So here I've got this bundle of parts I cut the other day. And what I had to do with these, they're not finished yet. I'm still a little burnt, but what I had to do to make this panel fit in here, to give it a good enough raise that it looks decent and not just a tiny little sliver down the middle, and still keep the stile and rail, was I had to make these stiles and rails a little bit shorter. As you can see right here, this is my rail for my door. This is 2 inches thick, and this is my rail for my drawer. It's 1.5 inches. So it's a little bit smaller, but I think having the smaller rails, stiles and rails there, is going to look better than doing like a slab or a flat panel for these drawers. You can kind of see what it look like. And I'm about to show you guys how exactly I came up with the measurements of everything and how to make it here in just a second. I'm going to plane me a piece of wood. I've already cut a piece right here. I've cut it to about 20 inches, which is the rough length of what I'll need. So I'm going to plane it down now to 3/4. So I finished my planing here. Now, when I planed this, I planed it down just a hair beneath 3/4. I got my 3/4 set block here that I use to tell how thick this piece is. And I'm kind of working on a rough workstation here. So I get everything good. I press it down, make sure everything's pressed down to the table. And when I run my finger across here, I want to be able to feel just a little bit of a lip. This block, I like it to be just a little bit higher than the piece of wood. And you'll see why here in a minute. So the next thing I would do is I would move over to the table saw and I'd rip these down into 1.5 inch pieces. Okay, so now that we've cut these pieces down to 1.5 inches, I didn't cut them on camera because I've already got a bunch of pieces. I don't need any more. But you would just take that piece of wood that you had planed right here and just cut it down in 1.5 inch strips. Easy stuff. And then you come over here. These pieces are already finished. These are some extras I had left over. But then you need to set your stile bit in your router. So, like I was saying, you'd have to set your stile bit here in your router. Now, this thing is pretty tricky to set up. especially if it's your first time using one. Now, so just look at this bit real quick. You can see it's got a upper cutter right here. You see this tooth? This is the upper cutter, and this is a lower cutter for this channel. This channel right here. Okay, and then down here on the bottom, you've got the one that cuts the profile. Mine, I'm using an Ogi, so that bottom red cutter cuts this little design in there. That's all it does. So when you're setting this up the first time, it's just going to be a lot of trial and error. You're just going to have to take a scrap piece and just cut it till it looks decent. But once you've got one of these pieces, you can use this to set this up. So if you can see, it's probably going to be hard to see, but I've got this piece setting in there so that bottom tooth, the red part, rests on the bottom of my wood there. And then one thing you'll notice when you're setting this up, because it's got those two cutters in the middle, you may set it up like this with the bottom cutter there, and you'll be thinking to yourself, how in the world, that's not right. But that's just your bottom cutter. You twist it around till you get this top cutter here. And you can see it's much tighter with the top cutter. I could probably honestly bring it up just a hair. One thing I did forget to mention is when you're setting this up, you need to set the fence so that it's parallel with this bearing here on this bit. If I take my square, just lay that right there on the bit. As you can see, the fence is not flush with this bit. So I'm going to move the fence up so that it's flush with the bit. Or that bearing, rather. Alright, and here we are. Fence is flush with the bearing. No rocking, you know. So now we're ready to cut our piece. I've put the rail bit in here to cut this rail. The way I like to do this is I like to use this sled here. So when I'm adjusting this, I put this sled up here, and then I slide my piece that I've already cut so that it matches up in there in those grooves. Now, if you don't have a piece that you've already cut, you're doing this for the first time, you'll do the same thing as before. Just take you a scrap piece of the same thickness, and it'll just be trial and error till you get it right. You know, you'll take your scrap piece that you are trying to set up with, and you'll grab one of your previous styles you just cut, and just make sure they roughly fit together. For me, they don't have to be super tight or anything like that, you know, just as long as they're close enough. But after you do that, you'll be ready to cut your piece. We're ready to cut. I'm just going to cut one real quick. One of these scrap pieces that I have. Cut. Alright, so now that you just cut that piece, you are to this point. Right here. Mine normally use these little, like a little fuzz up here. So I normally just take a knife and I trim it off. Okay, good and clean. So now we're just going to do a test fit with our stiles that we cut earlier. Okay, and it looks like it fits pretty well. Good enough for me, at least. You see in here now is the panel bit, and I just did the same thing. I had to move the fence for this one. Let me adjust this light. I had to move the fence for this one, but you know, same thing as before. Just use your square, make sure the fence is flush with that middle section of the bit there. Okay, so everything I showed you up till now has been standard procedure for making rails and stiles. Okay, now this is where it gets tricky, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you two examples. That drawer I got up there has the opening is 4 inches, so the panel would have to be 3 and a quarter, something like that. That's as big as I can make it. So this is normally the way you would set this up, with the square being back here. But I'm going to show you what happens when you do that. So the result would be something like that. You know, now this piece, I didn't mill down the 3/4, so it didn't cut the back out, you know. This is just for an example, just to show you guys. That's kind of what you'd be left with for a raised panel, which I don't know about you guys, but I don't like the looks of that. So what I've been doing is I've been pulling this up. So I pull this fence up to the point where it just barely touches that back cutter there. So this is my piece. I just want it to barely make contact with the back cutter. Maybe even a little more forwards there. So, all right, I got it set back up. We're gonna go ahead and do another cut. This piece right here is the same height as this piece, as you can see, and we'll see what the panel ends up looking like.